the pale blue dot.
Erin, thanks so much for having a chat for the MindMate podcast. I'm very excited.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you.
It's cool. I know it feels like we're in the same room, but we're not really in the same room.
I know. Technology is crazy. I mean, I think it's just getting more and more that way where you're just like, we're operating in different dimensions and different time zones, but we're together. So
For sure. I know I think like all of my biological human responses are like associated with the fact that we're in the same room, even though I'm speaking to you on a screen. In 10 years' time, it's going to be a hologram, and we're all going to be hugging each other, and it'll be crazy. It'll be nuts. Cool. All right. So, for people that don't know you or maybe don't know the work that you do, could you just give us like a brief description of, I guess, who is Erin, the persona of Erin Telford?
Oh my gosh. Brief description. So, that's always, I like that you said brief because that can be such an invitation for me to talk for 5 minutes. So
please do.
A brief description would be, let's see, I currently, at this moment in time in my life, I am a breathwork meditation teacher and facilitator, and a coach and a guide and a hand to hold, for people that work with me, and hopefully a living embodiment of my values and my beliefs, and someone who walks their talk and lives with integrity. And I'm really trying to, or maybe not trying to, but I am enjoying living this life and this nonstop experience of growth and being in a human body and what that looks like, and just trying to be some ground for people to stand on, and to be a steady person in people's experience, so that when they're going through tumultuous things, I can help them make some sense and find some love and support in all of the things that we go through as people in this life.
Yeah. I love what you said there. I love that you said you're trying to act through and kind of walk the talk and be who you think you are on the inside, and the values that you want to uphold and all that sort of stuff. I think that's such a really good guide for people, on their journey. It's like, how well are you actually embodying the moral compass of, the things you'd really like to do and the things you'd like to be and say. That's brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, that feels like, just interestingly enough, it's like when I got to meet Siobhan, and when I got to meet another couple, handfuls of people that had only known me on the internet or through social media, I always want to be the same person. I don't want there to be this like harsh chasm between who I appear to be and who I actually end up being in person. I want to be the person I am across platforms, IRL. I want to be that person. And I think that's like, to me, that feels like mastery. That feels like embodiment, to be who you are. And that includes me being like grumpy or feeling introverted or not really wanting to talk, as well as being, in a different space. So I think it's something to strive for, especially if you consider yourself to be a leader in any capacity. You want to be able to be living the life you're talking about, and not just talking about it.
Definitely. Well, there was I'm going to butcher this quote massively, but I do remember Mahatma Gandhi saying something like that, where happiness is when you think, say, and behave in the same way, or all of those things are aligned perfectly.
Yeah, I know that quote. I think you handled it pretty well.
Okay, 60%.
Yeah, I think that's true, because then you're not like keeping secrets, and you're not wearing a ton of masks. You're not being this one person for your partner, and then this one person for like your family, and this other person at work. When you have like an aligned, seamless experience of being who you are, you're not fragmented. Like that is peaceful. It's a peaceful experience to be aligned across the board, rather than having this fractured personality or things you put on for other people.
Yeah, it's just even just talking about it now, it's just stressful to uphold all those personas and wear a different mask for your family and wear a different mask for your girlfriend, and where it's a lot easier. I guess it's probably difficult when you're first starting out, or when you're just starting to kind of move into that space of wanting to get to know yourself a bit more, or wanting to live with a bit more of an authentic purpose, because some of the dead wood's going to have to be burnt off, and you're like, wow, I don't really feel like this persona is really me anymore, but it's that attachment to it is quite difficult for me to let go of,
It's so strong. It's so strong. Because I think that those protective personality parts are created so that you don't lose love, and that you don't get rejected, and you don't get criticized or judged or mocked or kicked out. So it's pretty hard to let go of those pieces of yourself if they're keeping you safe.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we're just like a danger detecting machine, aren't we?
Yes, we are. It's very trippy. Yeah, I mean, I've done my time in the school of learning how to love myself and figuring out how to actually like who I am and let myself be who I am without being ashamed of it, or trying to. I think a lot of people, especially people who are sensitive and empathic, and I don't know if you can relate to this, but you can get to be a very good chameleon.
Yeah,
you
for sure.
Kind of match your personality, and we're so dynamic and we're complex. So of course, who I'm going to be if I'm like watching a baseball game with some guy friends is going to be different than who I'm going to be when I'm like getting my nails done with some girlfriends, or if I'm having a heart-to-heart with my mom or my brother. We are so limitless in who we can be. But I think that those I had to really fall a lot more in love with myself, to let myself be who I was, my essence, rather than shape-shifting into somebody that I thought other people wanted me to be or were more comfortable with. So that's such a massive healing. And I think like the work that we do with David, my spiritual teacher, and at those retreats is really one of the biggest things that's so life-changing about that work is that you get to be who you are, and you get to be accepted and loved for that, even when there's like snot running down your chin, and you're flipping out, and you're losing your shit, and you're crying and screaming and revealing and all those things. You just get looked at with like a sea of faces of love, and that is one of the most ultimately healing things for people.
Yeah. Oh God, I've got so many bloody questions for you. I guess we should start from the beginning. For people that don't know, what is breathwork meditation? How does that differ from normal meditation? And yeah, if you could just dive in there, that'd be great.
Sure. So, most people know regular meditation as like seated meditation, or, Zen meditation, Buddhist meditation, TM. And I think that the purpose or the function for most people, that type of meditation, is that they get a chance to center and ground and calm themselves and kind of draw their energy in and achieve a place of like neutrality and peace. And breathwork meditation is like the exact opposite, because it wants to stir. Have you tried it yet?
Oh yeah, it's crazy. Okay. It's so trippy. Yeah, it's awesome. I loved it. Yeah, I was bawling my eyes out, and I don't cry a lot. I really don't cry a lot. I would be more than happy to say that I do, but I don't. And just bawling my eyes out. It was nuts. I got the one-on-one special, which was cool.
I'm so happy you bawled your eyes out, because we all need opportunities to do that. And I think that they say for women, the most taboo emotion to express is anger, and for men it's sadness. Yeah. So those are the ones that we repress the most, because we have the most shame around feeling those ones and letting them out. And they're the most intense of all of the emotions. Yeah. So So breathwork stirs the pot. It's there to get your energy moving and to reach into the places and spaces where you're holding emotions, where you have stuck emotional energy, where you've got traumas, where you've got wounds and limiting beliefs and stored stuff in your body. So the breath kind of swoops in and reaches into those places within you, and your heart opens through the process, and through breathing deeply, you you can't, I mean, that's why everybody breathes shallowly, or why many people breathe in a more shallow way, because it helps you keep a lid on your emotions. It keeps things from being too big and too uncomfortable. So you can't help but feel when you breathe very deeply and you're very present with your body. So it's there to heal trauma, to release things, you know, emotionally and from your nervous system. And it's just my very favorite healing modality. It's done wonders for me and for so many of the people that I know and my clients. And it's a very efficient and effective way to like change your belief system and to get to the core of your emotional wounds and the things that have you been caring for your whole life. You know, the depression you've had since you were in your 20s, or the anxiety you've had since you were a kid. It gets in there, and you can very easily find the root of those things. Well, very easily might be a little bit of a stretch, but somewhat easily. You have to work for it, though.
Yes.
You have to work for it. You have to be in, and you have to do the work. You have to breathe, and you have to let yourself surrender your mind and get in your body and feel some of those things.
It's crazy. You lie down and you take 2 breaths, one through the belly, one through the chest, and then you breathe out. And then you keep going with the flow of the music, and the facilitator like yourself and Siobhan and these other incredible people take you through that. And it's amazing what you guys, I've not obviously worked with you, but I've done some stuff with my lovely other half and with another facilitator in Bali. And it's amazing how you guys are able to tap into kind of, I guess like you said, like the energy, but the way people are dealing with what's coming up at the time, like how you know how to, hey, you got to breathe through this, or you know whatever. I'm not a facilitator, but it is challenging to continue to breathe, knowing that you kind of have to move through these things that come up. And especially for me, it was some stuff that I didn't even know I had, and B, hadn't even thought of for a very long time, that created that. But then on the other side of that was just this incredible joy and this bliss and this deep connection to the state that I was in. But yeah, God, there are so many questions. I guess how do you because it's not easy for someone to want to dive into their trauma, you know? How do you describe to someone how important it is, someone that's not in this field at all, how important it is to go into that world, to come to know yourself a little better?
You know, I mean, I think you said it, like it is the most human thing to avoid pain. Like why would you ever want to do that? Like, let's go into our trauma. It's great, you know? It's gonna be a fun time. So, I mean, I have kind of a not like a rule necessarily, but I think that I don't sell this work. You know, I talk about this work, and I'm never going to be in the business of like convincing somebody to do this. I just talk about what it's done for me, and I talk about how it's changed my life. And I think because it's an intense confrontational practice, that if anybody's interest is piqued into this, if they're like, what is that? What do you lay down and you yell, people cry, you do it with other, like, together. That's so weird. But if somebody's like the slightest bit interested in it, you know, I definitely can't say like it's so fun, it can't be fun, but I kind of tell them just like what my experience has been, and you know, I say how much it's changed my life and who I was. I discovered this work in 2014, so almost 6 years ago. Who I was at that point in time, I thought that I was like, this is the best I'm ever going to get, because I was already an acupuncturist, I was already an herbalist, I was already a Reiki Master, I'd already done so much healing work, like personally, been to therapy, like I'd seen so many different healers, and I just thought, you know, a lot of people get depressed every once in a while. That's totally normal. You know, this is the bar for how happy and healthy and self-actualized I could possibly be. I didn't see a lot of people that were, you know, and I'm by no means like at the upper echelon of like what you can do with your consciousness and your life, but I just kind of thought this is pretty good. Like where I'm at is pretty good, and you know I still get really triggered by my family, and I still have to like decompress and have a hard time after I see them, and you know, but that's normal, you know, and I still have some grief and some trauma, but that's normal. Everybody has that. And until when I found breathwork, I didn't know that there was a way to actually go beyond that stuff and really heal the roots. And I mean, I had to work my ass off. I'm definitely going to say I'm like emerging out of the end of like a 4 or 5 year period where I was grinding it out.
Wow.
You know, just like going into every part of my shadow and like, what's here? Oh, look, here's another. Yay.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
you know, just,
more fear.
Yeah, like this again, you know, like
yeah.
The things you do when you're, you know, trying to have a good sense of humor about all the shit you have in your personal history.
Oh God, no.
But yeah, and there's so much, but it's I can't even believe how much like peace, contentment, creativity, and like emotional equilibrium that I have now. And so I think just telling people that experience, that there's more, that doesn't even seem possible because you don't see a lot of examples of it, that there's more, and that there can be so much joy and connection with like spirit and nature and all these wonderful things, and that life can get better than you can even imagine, and you may not be able to recognize yourself in the best way possible.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So if they're interested after I say something like that, then they can come to the group. You know?
Exactly. Yeah, you're not selling pens, put it that way.
No, and I also am like, come or don't come. You know, come or don't come. Like, come and give it a go and see what you think. And if you're, you know, if you're hooked, you're hooked. You know, I think that you get that glorious payoff, like you were talking about, with the massive bliss and connection to yourself, like that heart opening. Every time I get that, I'm like, I will sob my face off for 20 minutes for that, because that's like the truth. That's
sure.
The truth. Yeah.
Yeah, you touched on bloody heaps of things there. I think a really cool way to move into this a little further would be to, because some people think of trauma as, you know, the end of the spectrum sort of stuff, like sexual abuse as a child or car accidents and all that sort of stuff, you know. But I think a lot of us don't really get the fact that we're all traumatized in different ways, and there are all these sorts of experiences that have kind of disassociated our character, and we're kind of stuck in that child mind frame, you know. So if you could kind of go into what trauma is, how it gets stuck, and then how the breath can actually help us move through that.
Yeah. So yeah, I love that you said that about trauma and how people perceive it. And I think people are just starting to get the idea that, like, yeah, there's some people refer to it as like little t trauma and big T trauma. Like there's the trauma that you imagine, just like you said, like sexual abuse or, you know, any violations of your body, your physical body, any kind of emotional, physical, sexual abuse or rape or any of those things. And then there's just like the trauma of being human. Yeah. You know, the trauma of like being a neglected child. You know, maybe being a child who kind of got lost in the shuffle of a stressful marriage and who never actually felt celebrated or supported or seen, or loved as much as they needed. There's the, you know, ongoing trauma of adult life where, you know, I just had a friend who was going through a very, very intensely challenging thing this week, and we were just kind of communicating over DM, and, you know, we both probably needed a hug. Like we needed more contact and more communication than we were getting from each other. The kind of like the busy lifestyle where when we really need someone to be there in person, it's not always possible, and having to kind of silently suffer through things or pull our bootstraps up Yeah, the loneliness of adult life, I think, can be you know, I don't want to say intensely traumatic, but it can wear at you. It
Yes.
can wear at you, and it can create a sense of not feeling supported, not feeling enough love, you know, being on your own. And so while that's not the same as having, you know, abuse in your life, it can be equally as kind of damaging to your spirit, I think.
Yeah.
And those are just two examples. So of course you can use your imagination to think of all the ones in your own life,
Yeah.
and all the ones in my life, and everyone else's life is listening. So trauma, you know, I think they say 95% of trauma is in the nervous system. So when we have a jarring event, and maybe it's just like, I mean, I think of something so small, like I remember when I was really young, that I was so, you know, when you're a little kid, you're like a spark plug, you know, you're so excited about everything. And I remember a couple occasions where like I came with this little fireball energy up to my mom to like tell her something or show her something. And her response to me was like, not now. Or like, don't talk to me, you know, because she was like cooking dinner or she was doing something. And like my giant energy was just like, just don't, you know. And so even as I tell that story, I can feel that like rejection in my body, and that like disappointment, and that, you know, the imprint of that sadness of like, because when you're a little kid, you take that as like, I'm unloved.
Yes.
I'm not valued. I'm not important. I'm alone in this. I'm not supported. You take it as like such a big thing, and it's received into your body as this truth. And then so we develop these kind of core wounds and limiting beliefs based on whatever environment we were fed in our lives. And everything is so much bigger for, you know, sensitive children, empathic children. So it gets charged. Whenever you have an emotional charge, it imprints on your nervous system, and it imprints, and it starts to kind of like run as, this is how life is. Like, this is who you're allowed to be. This is who, you know, how other people think about you. This is what the world is like. And this is where things like, I'm too much, I'm not enough. My joy is hurtful to other people. You know, my expression makes people angry. You start to develop all these ideas about your personality, and you start to develop your shadow side, all the parts that you self-reject and that other people reject about you. And that's where that original like fracture of personality happens, where you start cranking up the personality traits that get you love, and you start turning down the things that you're getting punished for or rejected for, and you start repressing all that stuff. So yeah, that's kind of a broad stroke.
Yeah.
And like, everybody goes through that though.
Yes.
I think it's so important to know that we all experience trauma, like no matter what. And I was just listening to this other podcast, this guy Luke's story. I don't know if you ever listened to him, but he
who were you listening? That's really strange. Were you listening to him and Maston Kip?
No, but I that's on the list.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was just listening. Yeah, I love that. I love him. Yeah, for sure.
But he was talking about his first ayahuasca journey, and how, you know, and how he, you know, he'd done all these things, like all of his therapy, and he got sober and all these things. But yet when he went and did that first ayahuasca journey, he was floored by the depth of pain he experienced as a child.
Wow.
And I think that's true for all of us. Like, no matter what, you know, maybe more on the severe end, if you were abused or neglected, or there was, you know, drug abuse or alcoholism in your family. But, you know, I didn't have any of that in my family. And I still, you know, whenever I do breath work, I'm still, for 5 years now, I'm crying out all my pain from then, and then all my pain that's probably everybody else's too. Because it's just, it's brutal to be a human being, and amazing.
Yes.
But acknowledging the depth of suffering that we have accrued in our bodies as grown people is a little knee-buckling sometimes.
Yeah, I think there are some very clear objective traumatic experiences, like we touched on before, and no one can say, wow, I mean, obviously that's going to be very traumatic for you. But I think there's also a real kind of move, because we're so individualized in the way we live in this day and age. We're in our boxes, we go to work in our boxes, we sit at our boxes, everything's given to us, it's individualized, and it can be a real pain. There's like a move not to play the victim card, and be like, oh, I had trauma, which is cool, because you don't want to fall into that self-pity kind of mentality, but you don't want to completely neglect those experiences altogether, because they're probably holding you back as well. I find that it's difficult for people to get out of kind of their routine to even consider that they may actually have something holding them back from becoming who they could be. And I was wondering if you could respond to that, like what you would say to someone, how you would, I mean, what's the question I'm kind of looking for here? It's, I don't want to say people are unconscious, because I could be unconscious right now. In 5 years' time, I'll look back and be like, who the fuck was that guy? But like, what could you say to someone that is kind of unaware of goings on in their life, but is also interested to kind of play that reflective card?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's anything that can necessarily be said in that case. I want to come up with something good, but it seems like people are ultimately motivated by discomfort, right? So if you're just kind of going along and you've got some people around you that will mirror the fact that like life kind of sucks and work sucks and things are hard, and like, yeah, I love my partner, but they also suck sometimes.
Yeah.
And there's like, the kind of status quo of like things being like borderline miserable with some bright highlights. That person's probably not going to get into a place of self-inquiry until like there's maybe there's a death in their life, or there's a breakup, there's like a loss of some kind, or they get sick, or there's something that happens to shake up their life to the point that they have to look at what's going on. So I think you have to be uncomfortable in order to, that's too black and white. I mean, I'm kind of like committed to this path, so I'm pretty comfortable, and yet I know that it's kind of like once you see things, you can't unsee them. So I can't look away from my stuff. I cannot, and I am comfortable, but I'm also willing and ready to get uncomfortable whenever the next wave of like, oh, you need to deal with this thing happens. But I'm very neutral on kind of like, and I know that you're not asking me to like convince or sell anybody on this.
No.
I think if somebody was moderately curious, there's a difference between being steeped in your victimhood where you are kind of committed to it. I'm noticing that a lot with people more recently, where I'm asking them the question, are you more committed to your suffering or your healing? Are you so overly identified with this part of you that's been hurt and hard done by and bashed around, or are you actually, do you want to look ahead? Like, are you more committed to staying here, or are you more committed to doing whatever it takes to grow and change and get to a different place?
Yeah. And that's a fantastic question, because I think, and I've noticed this within my own experience as well, that the suffering that I've, intrinsically labeled myself with in the past, it's easy to stay in that world because it actually makes sense. And it's safe. It's in a roundabout way, it's safe, because to look to a future where things could be better doesn't make sense. It's the unknown,
Yeah, and like who's living that future? Who's in the future? I've been totally confronting that in myself very recently, because I just went through this, giant period of really digging in there. And through this work is like all about making space for people's pain and suffering and trauma, and like getting out the grief and getting out the sadness and getting out the rage, and getting out all this stuck energy. And now I'm at this very interesting place where, and it just happened kind of this year, where I'm less identified with that because of the work that I've done on myself. But I'm like, what's ahead? I don't know what's ahead. And the idea of like, is that even real?
Yeah.
Like I know what this feels like right now, but what seems like would be in front of me would be more of like a utopian situation. And there would be a lot more joy, and there would be a lot more unity and community and connection. And I see that, I feel that, I'm part of that. But it almost seems like a world that still needs to be created and not something that's 100% existing in the here and now. Like I see it in pockets of like conscious community, and here you are with your, creating community across the world. And there's so many people that are creating conscious connection, wanting to have these conversations, and it's happening. It's not limited. It's like, it's globally. But what are the next steps? Like, where do I go from here? And if I'm not having this allegiance to pain and suffering, and I am moving more into this other space and like less drama and more equilibrium, then who's coming with me? Who's already there? And how do I honor people's real experiences that are happening here and now, and also like shine the light down the path to what could be. So I'm in an interesting place, because I've always made fun of like the love and light spiritual people. I've always been like, I wear like,
you have trauma, you're exactly the same.
I've got all my stuff, all my tools and everything, but I've been very much like, no, we're working with pain, we're working with the shadow, we're working with trauma, like let's get in there, and like that's the way. And then the heart opening and the joy and the bliss is on the other side of that, but we go here first. And I'm just I'm in a very middle space with how much space I want to make for that, how do I reach into the future and hold space for what's possible.
Wow, that's interesting. So what are you thinking then? Like, what are some of your ideas for future Erin?
I don't know. It's very much like I'm evolving in the current moment, and I'm just noticing even on like social media where there's so many dramatic revelations that are, people basically just post dramatic revelations unless they're posting about like their juice or something like that. So,
which is dramatic.
Juice or dramatic juice.
Yeah, too much kale.
I don't know where there's not a lot of space for just doing well.
I like that.
And just having a really even keel existence, like that's not very enticing. It's not a good story. Still doing good.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey guys, I'm still awesome.
Still good over here. And I mean, it's so arrogant. Like I was just thinking about what I could possibly write about that today, and I thought, anytime you make a declaration like that, you get your ass handed to you. So be careful how you declare where you currently are.
Yeah.
But it's a space of evolution. I'm just noticing. It's interesting to be able to watch yourself and see like, oh, this is how you've been running things for years, and now this other idea of more joy. Like, do we trust it? Can we count on it? Can we be more interested in happiness?
Yes.
Because I think that it's in my household, or not necessarily 100%, but I think sometimes like, what's that phrase, like blissfully ignorant?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can think of happy people as being like stupid, like they don't really get it. Like if you're happy, you don't really get it. You're not seeing what's really going on, and or you're spiritually bypassing, or your blinders are on. And so I'm just curious about how to be very conscious and awake and alive, but making a lot of space for like true joy.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. And I reckon there is a difference between what you're saying and what being, at least in my perspective, blissfully ignorant is to me. Blissfully ignorant, and I kind of have looked into it because it's a real external projected resentment for me. It was one of the issues that like I was so like pissed off all the time with my dad because I was equally fearful that I was wasting my life. And I'm like, fuck you, and all this sort of stuff. You know, we're good friends now. We're like best mates now. But
that's amazing.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it was equally on his part as well. But that was a real thing for me. You know, I was so triggered by all that sort of stuff. And I think, you know, and this is completely disregarding my dad now, but, you know, people that are blissfully ignorant tend to find that blissful ignorance in mediocre distraction. I think what you're talking about is something a lot more intrinsic. It's like, You've gone through all of that stuff, and maybe it's time, you know, with the yin and the yang, just to be able to find happiness in the little day things. Like if you had a lovely day, you had your coffee in the morning, you read a book, and you caught up with a friend, and that's okay too. You know, I think there's a real, at least from my experience, social media thing to be like, achieve your goals and make millions and all the entrepreneurial thing as well. But it's just as hard. It's really hard to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the simple things. I do. I like a mellow life. I don't know. I feel like I've had enough like hard hits in life that I'm also in my mid 40s too, which I feel like makes a little bit of a difference, where it's like you know, if you've been relatively on track and paying attention, that you've gone through you've walked through a lot of fires already, and there's like a little bit of a payoff at the end where, the beauty and simplicity of the coffee and a great talk with your friend and like the sunshine and the flowers.
Yeah.
Really good. It feels nice, you know?
It actually, like, I find that the breath work and meditation and spending more time with yourself to get to know yourself actually really helps you see that bliss in the little things like that. And you don't necessarily need... Because, you know, that whole pain and pleasure addiction spectrum is a spectrum, and, you know, it may not be like heroin for you and I, or fucking like heaps of sex and all that sort of thing, but it could be like Netflix or like chocolate or the little things. And, you know, if you can come back and you see like the monks, the happiest of them all, and they can get that joy out of looking at a flower pot, they're like, Jesus, they're enlightened.
Definitely not there. I still watch too much TV and eat too much sugar.
I know, but it's so good. I can't get enough.
I know, it's so good.
Oh God, I know.
Yeah. What do you do? I don't even know what you do.
Oh well, I'm podcaster, and I love writing books. So I'm trying to write my second and third. Yeah. But I love counselling. I just finished my counselling diploma, so I'm looking forward to kind of moving into this space and you know, helping Siobhan on her journey as well, because I'm so obsessed with kind of these sorts of things that we're talking about. You know, we always laughed at, like, if we were ever to go on a fresh date or something, it would be like, oh, so how was your day? It'd be like, tell me about your trauma. It'd be like the weirdest people to go on a date with, you know?
But like, why not get in there, you know? I think it's especially if you have some neutrality and some consciousness around it. But it's fascinating. I love talking about all that stuff because if you know what you're talking about and you've like worked through some of it, it's so what conscious relationships are about, right? To be able to like work through, have that sacred container where you can your wound matching and you're able to heal and grow through and get to the other side of that.
Yeah, well, you get to know someone so much more, don't you? You know, because we all say, how was your day? Yeah, good, you know, and you, and that's fine. Like, it's good. Maybe in that moment your day was good based on your emotional regulation, but it's so much more interesting to know, oh, you know, when I was 7, I had this terrible experience, and like, oh, here's a real person.
Right. Yeah, I like to dig in there too. I think it's, people say don't bring that stuff up on the first date, but why not? Yeah,
100%. Yeah. So you were doing your acupuncture before. How did you come across breathwork?
So I went to a yoga retreat in 2014, and it was in Nicaragua.
Oh, nice.
It was yoga, so I thought our instructor says we're going to do some breath work before dinner, and I thought we would just do yoga type breath work, breath of fire or whatever. And we laid down, and he gave us very little instruction, very little anything. It was basically like, here's the breath, lay down and do it. No check-in, no like this is a healing circle, no what's going on for you, like zero. Just like, here's the breath, do it. So I laid down, and it was so intense because we're in the jungle, you know. So it's like evening, and we're right on the beach. So you got the backdrop of like the water crashing on the rocks. You got our other facilitator, like just very gently drumming and singing some medicine songs. But all of like the birds and the insects, all the bugs and the wind and all the things in the trees. And we just started breathing, and I got emotional so quickly, and I was very confused. I was very, very confused. I'm like, why is this happening? I'm just breathing. Why do I want to cry right now? And there were two other people on either side of me that ended up becoming friends, but they were very vocal and comfortable. Like they found that sadness within them, and they just went for it. So they're crying and they're bawling, and I was like, okay, good. I'm not the weird one, the only one that's going to start crying in this whole group. And so I let myself go. I let myself have it, and just went on the most incredible journey. I got to move so much grief out of my body. I got to scream and express so much rage. I had a visitation. My little sister had died about 5 years earlier, and I felt her like come and visit me and put her hand on my heart. Like, her presence was so strong. And it was so intense. It was like the best psychedelic journey I'd ever taken, but like short, you know. It was like 45 minutes or whatever. And when I sat up, I was so floored. Like, the love that I felt in my heart for myself, you know, just like the compassion and the tenderness that I felt for myself, and then the massive love that I felt for all these other people on the retreat that I think it was maybe our second night, so we had just started to get to know each other. I just felt so much love. And it was so beautiful and so strong and so pure, you know. It just felt so true. Like, it enveloped my whole body. And I just said to my friend, I was like, what the hell was that? What did we just do? How did you learn this? And just immediately ran back to my room and like booked the first retreat that I could book with David, because I had to study it. It felt like the key and the lock for that kind of plateau place that I'd gotten to, where I thought there isn't anything better than this. This is a good life. All of a sudden I could see that there was like a several doors beyond what I thought was possible, and that I had to do more, and I had to learn how to do it.
God.
So, yeah.
You don't often have experiences like that in life, you know, like maybe traveling and you see the Leaning Tower of Pisa for the first time, like blown away and all that sort of stuff. But what's so incredible about these experiences is that it's just your breath and some music in the background, you know?
Yeah.
So what goes on then during that process? Like, when it's like hyperventilation, but how does that change the, you know, your awareness of the body, and what goes on?
Yeah. So I do have to just say that it's a lot of people think it's hyperventilation.
Oh, cool. Right.
But hyperventilation is when you're actually like gasping for air. So you're inhaling more than you're exhaling, and it's out of control. So with this breath, you are exhaling, you're inhaling. Wait a second, I flipped that around. So with this breath work, you're inhaling more than you're exhaling. And with hyperventilation, you're exhaling more than you're inhaling because you can't get breath in.
Yes. Yep.
So
True.
it's more like over oxygenation. So on like more of a like scientific level or like a physical level, the over oxygenation of the body is going to stimulate the hypothalamus, which is going to trigger an endorphin release. So that's the kind of like the good feeling, and the tingling, some of the vibrations, and you are hyper arousing the nervous system in a safe and sacred space. So you are triggering and activating some of those wounds and those traumas and those past experiences and memories, to be able to release some of that, a somatic release of a charge from your nervous system.
Wow.
So in a more, like a sciencey way, that's what's happening. But then in like a more esoteric spiritual way, like I've never had an endorphin rush that made me feel the amount of love that I feel with breath work. So there may be some good endorphins kicking around in there, but I think that what we're really trying to do is we're like aligning, we're calling spirit into the body, we're calling our soul essence back into the body, and we're aligning and calling in the highest vibration of love and joy into the body. And overriding the thinking brain, letting go, like surrendering logic, surrendering the way that we frame and look at the world, and being able to drop into and go right straight into the divine intellect of our emotional body and make contact with our spirit. And when we're overriding that thinking brain, it's just like psychedelics, where you override the executive function, and then all those other parts of the brain that never get to speak to each other, they get to talk. So you get those psychedelic ahas, and you get those like quick realizations, and those things that have maybe felt like confusing to you for years. And you're like, I don't know why my dad was always like that, or I don't know why I have this pattern with women. And all of a sudden it's just like, boom, got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's that straight shot to your spirit, to your intuition, to your heart, to your creativity. There's so much going on, and it's, there's a lot going on, but that's kind of like the science and the energetics of it.
It's amazing. Like, having done breathwork and psychedelics, they're very, very similar.
And they are. It's amazing.
Yeah, but the breathwork was just more, maybe I'm biased, or I'm just trying to figure out my own experience with it, but maybe I'm biased, but maybe not. It made a lot more sense to me why things were coming up, if that makes sense. Like, I was able to gauge, oh, cool. I mean, without even having set an intention, I was like, oh, no wonder that came up then, or like, that makes perfect sense. And they're never these like logical, oh yeah, of course. They're always these like you said, shadows illuminating from the unconscious, and they're going, oh, but then they make sense straight away like that, and explaining it in a scientific way is great. But we're in the experiential human beings. That's kind of how we perceive the world. And saying a bunch of endorphins rush through the body, and the ego mind switches off or whatever, it's not that scientific. It doesn't explain it. It just doesn't give it that credibility.
Yeah, it's not enough. That's just like one layer.
To say
that, definitely, because there's so much more. Yeah, and so much more. I always find like I like the science because it can validate the things that I already know, but I don't really care about it so much, because the world of the unseen is so much more interesting and so much more vast. I mean, I guess when you get into like quantum physics and all the cool science, it's different. But yeah, the world of the unseen and the knowing that you get, you don't really need an explanation. You don't need a double-blind test to confirm what you feel.
Definitely. And especially if you think about what the goal with this stuff is, like our goal is to be happier, more connected, have a lot of meaning and purpose in our lives. And if these experiences give us that, well then, we've achieved that goal. And explaining it in the scientific realm is like, that's great, but I'm actually happier, so I'm going to continue to follow down that pragmatic approach.
Yeah. I mean, that's the reason. I mean, I say that like kind of as a little bit of a joke, but sometimes with my groups, I'm like, we're doing this because we want to be happier.
Yeah.
I think that's a pursuit. That's a very honest pursuit. Like, I'm not trying to become enlightened in this life. I just want to experience more peace and more joy and like more content within my body. I want to have a good time. I don't want to be burdened by all my self-doubt, my insecurities, my fears. Like, I don't want to be paralyzed by any of those things. So the more I go towards them and like spend some time mucking around in all that pain and all that old stuff and how it's showing up in my present life, then I get to live right now without carrying like that 1,000-pound bag on my back that's gonna take me out whenever it decides to.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's amazing how so many unconscious modes of behavior come up from this sort of stuff. You know, like addictions came up for me. I would never have classified myself as someone who was addicted to things, you know, but porn and food and external validation and all these, it was like, oh wow, I had no idea. I thought I was pretty good, you know. I was one with the boys. But you know, it really is fantastic. And what's some of the stuff that you do now as a breathwork facilitator? Do you hold group events? Do you do online work as well?
I do, yeah. I stopped seeing one-on-one clients this year because I had this feeling and I had this kind of intuitive hit, and then it was confirmed by this woman I used to confirm my intuitive hits.
Nice.
And it was confirmed that my energy was best used for groups, and I really, really love groups so much, and I like big groups. I love working with like the community and the coherence that happens with larger groups. I've been seeing this happen more and more, and it's kind of like that echo. There's like a biological or kind of like a subconscious experience that people have when you get into a group size that's around like 50 people, because you have that remembering of, oh, I remember when we lived together in a village.
Yeah.
I remember when I didn't have to do this alone. I remember when we ate together. I remember when there were like several elders that I could seek counsel from. And there's just this like, to watch that happen and feel like we're burning through collective karma every time we get together is just my favorite thing in the world. So groups, yes, online groups. I'm starting like a small group coaching program for breathwork facilitators tomorrow morning, because I want everybody to feel really confident and secure, and I want them to feel like they're expanding and deepening their craft, because I want all the people who love this work to be able to offer it in a way that feels like so creative and soulful and like from their heart, and I want them to feel like they can do it. A lot of people are afraid to offer this work, and they don't feel confident, they feel scared, they feel worried about what might happen. And so I really want to just kind of hold some hands and help people feel like they can offer it in a larger way or deepen their sessions. So I do retreats, and then I train people to do the level 1 teacher training. So I offer that as well. And I'm writing. I am writing my first book.
Oh, nice.
I'm working on it. I love that you said I love to write books, because it's so real. It's such a massive undertaking to just get yourself to get started even.
Oh yeah, I think it's a great exercise for cultivating the ability to postpone gratification, because it's just months and months and like, oh, now go back to the start, this sentence sucks now, all that sort of thing. But it's great when you look back on it and you're holding your book, and it's good. What's your book about?
My book's about feelings. It's about emotions and kind of like how to feel them and how to deal with them. Like what does it mean to be? What is the message of anger? What is it asking you to do? If it's coming to visit, what does it want you to do with that? And we just have such a culture of repression and shame around feeling and stuffing and all that stuff. So I want it to be kind of like a handbook for people to really understand the depths of themselves and why there isn't anything such as a negative emotion, and kind of just the messages of like sadness, fear and anxiety, rage and anger, and self-love and expression and addiction and trauma and all that stuff. So kind of like I haven't seen any other books like this necessarily. There's probably some that kind of touch on different things, but I haven't seen any written by a book like this that's not written by like a doctor or a therapist. So I want it to be kind of part storytelling and then part kind of like, this is a handbook to your internal space. Like this is how you deal with yourself and hold yourself through these experiences, and like what the cues are from your emotional body, and how you can, rather than shaming yourself or numbing yourself or distracting yourself or waiting for this to go away, this is how you feel this, and how you feel it with grace, and how you take action through the kind of delivery system, the tool of your body, and these emotional cues.
Oh, I think that's a very well needed book. I'll definitely be keen to read it. I think a lot of the pain and suffering that we do cause to ourselves in this day and age is partly due to the fact that when we experience these emotions, that the logical mind overrides them and says that they're wrong, and we apply resistance to that. And we had an emotional mind long before we had a logical mind, and we're experiencing an external signal for a reason. Like back in the day, if you got really anxious, you'd start looking around for food because you were probably hungry, and then you'd find your food, and then your anxiety would come down. So we're experiencing these feelings for a reason. So, I'd be keen to read that.
Thank you.
Definitely.
You. I'm gonna have to find out what your books are so I can read them too.
Yeah, well, yeah, for sure. We'll just start a book club, I think.
I love it.
We're good.
Cross Atlantic book club, yes.
For sure. Well, Erin, thanks so much for doing the podcast. We'll have to get you back on. I want to get a whole bunch of people just coming on the show every couple of months to stay updated and kind of build the community and all this sort of stuff. Love talking about it, so it'd be great.
I love that. I love the idea of coming back because it's always fresh, right? It's like we're always in another place, and who knows where the hell I'm going to be in 6 months, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, all that stuff.
Physically, could be in Melbourne.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was lovely to talk to you, and I hope that whoever's listening gets some good nuggets out of this. And thank you. Definitely.
Hey, where can people find you, Erin?
They can find me on my website, erintelford.com, and they can find me on Instagram, erintelford__.
I love it. Awesome. Well, thanks so much again, Erin. It was awesome.
Thank you. So good to speak to you.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Cheers.